So you can say that,
Okay, this is part 2. And
so you mentioned that you have a connection with Babaji. Tell me about it. How did that connection start?
So in 1998, it's an interesting little story. I'll try to make it as condensed as possible. So I had been traveling, and I had lived on the west coast of Canada on Salt Spring Island in the 80s of 86, 87. And I had recently come back into Ontario. And a friend of mine who we were very, very close, and she had also lived on Salt Spring, and we lived on the land and off grid, and we had beautiful times together. I would travel to her home in Toronto and visit her, and after she returned to Ontario as well. And one day I arrived, and she said, somebody gave me an address and a telephone number to a woman who is called Hariom Tat Sat. And she's giving satsang, and it was about an hour and a half northeast of Toronto. And she said to me, "Do you feel to go there?" And immediately I said, "Sure." And it wasn't something I contemplated at all. It was like, "Sure, let's go." And when we went, it was an experience I had not had in this life, yet was very, very familiar with. So she was just beginning to attract people, and there ended up being, I think there was about 12 of us who became. You got some friends.
My dogs.
Over the years, there was about 12 people who ended up being, close disciples. And so that evening in satsang began the process for me. And so the very first thing I did was read Autobiography of a Yogi and the Holy Science. And shortly after that, in the same year, I was meditating, and we were initiated into Kriya. And I was a mother of one son, and at that period of time, now more than that. And I would get up in the middle of the night to meditate. So after everything was quiet in the house, and I would meditate in the early morning hours. And I had a lot of interesting sounds and happenings in those early times. I would feel and hear. And one early morning, Babaji came in auditory only, and he gave me some information. And one of the things that he said was, "You have a lot of work to do." And it was an experience that really opened me energetically. So even though the words were very simplistic, the energy was very opening for me, and it really opened, and the inspiration that was embodied lasted all through those years. So we built a beautiful temple, an octagon temple, and we held satsang on Friday evenings. We did Guru Gita for the disciples only on Saturday evenings. And then once a month we did, in Toronto, we did a workshop where each of us had a part. My part was in teaching Ayurveda. And as well as some other things. We did some, some opening work, but so that went on for all of those years. And in 1997, well, through those years, I could see that there was some energies that weren't being released, and they were being compounded. There were some emotional energies, and there was also some financial energies that were being, that were just, say, muddying up that pristine energy. And I was aware of it, but yet I was just continuing in the devotional process. And in 1997, during the Guru Gita, in the temple, Babaji appeared to me in full light body. And no one else. At first I looked, I wanted I felt like it was like a group experience, but I quickly realized that no one else could see him. And in that transmission, he told me, I translated into English, because in this time it was a telepathic. It was much more than words, as telepathy always is. But one of the main messages was that I was to be independent. But the energy was so powerful. I should go back a little bit. So when he first appeared, the first transmission was to, he wanted to give me a gift. That was the first transmission was to give me a gift. And what was the gift? I was to choose what the gift was. And I was so overwhelmed with the vibration that what came to me to ask was, may I touch your hair? And there was no answer. It was just an energetic affirmation. And so I reached out with my right hand, and I went close. It was, it was light body, but there was some form to it. And I touched it. And when I touched the hair, I got an electrical current that went, and it was very much like, it was very fibrous. It wasn't like human hair. It was very fibrous. And I got an electrical current that went through my arm and into my center and throughout my whole body. And following that, I received the transmission, but following that, I was weeping for hours and I couldn't speak. So I was in the temple. I still have, right near me, I still have the shawl that I was wearing that I literally soaked with tears. And so anyway, the main part of that was that I was to be independent. So later, and it was just, a period of time, which was perhaps about 10 or 15 minutes in Earth time, and that he remained. And then, so later I contemplated independence, what that meant, what was Babaji telling me? And another part of the transmission was for to listen for his voice. So that was on a Saturday night. On the Tuesday, I received, I heard auditorily his voice and that vibrational energy to call Hari Om Tat Sat and to resign as a teacher of the workshops, which I did promptly. And I wasn't, the other part of it was that I wasn't to, that it had to come from me. It wasn't, and Babaji said, I wasn't to say to anybody that it was, that it was to come from me. This was my you know, and so I did that. And after I had left the ashram on the Sunday, and I never returned. And so all of my life was built around that structure, even the social structure. My dearest friends were there. And so I was then thrust into what I soon discovered to be that process of independence. And it was shortly thereafter. It was so that was late in 1997, and it was early in 1999. But electronics came. So that was sort of the process in that. But yet, even though I left the ashram, the connection, the vibrational frequency with that energy of Mahavatar Babaji remains strong. So I had to let go of a lot of things in the process that I found later that I had was very attached to in many, many, many ways, and that was the process of being independent. Mm-hmm. And likewise, so how did Kriya come to you?
Well, I had some very powerful awakenings when I lived in the US. One in 2001 and one in 2002. And particularly the one in 2002 when I was involved with Saniel Bonder's work, which is called Waking Down in Mutuality. Prior to that, I had gone through a consciousness awakening. And after that, something started happening to me that none of the people around me who were doing the work with this teacher could really understand and resonate with. So I didn't really tell them much because according to them, all of this is an illusion and you should not pay any attention. I started feeling a strange pull towards manifestation, towards embodiment. And I found a book that was written by Saniel Bonder called Waking Down. And when I read it, it resonated so profoundly with me because it was what was actually happening. And this is one thing I want to point out about a process like that. It's not something that you say, oh, cool, that sounds nice, let's get embodied. That's not quite how it goes. Mm-hmm. It is the direction of the soul itself. And all you can do is you either recognize that that's where it's going or you're transcending. So this is the two different movements that your soul can have in this lifetime, transcendence or embodiment. Not everybody is here to embody and not everybody is here to transcend. So I just had to accept the fact that my path was about embodiment, and then going along with that, and I got involved with Sania's work. And very rapidly, when I was entering the work, I actually went through something called the second birth. And what that means is when the awakened consciousness lands in the body itself. And in that process, this body itself begins to awaken to its own divinity. That's the best way I can describe it. So this is no longer inert matter, but it's beginning to more and more know its own divinity. And in that process, what Saniel talks about after, what happens after the second birth is, he terms it, he has wonderful terminology. It's very sort of earth-shaking because you really get through his terminology what it could be about. He calls it the wake down, shakedown. And so for 8 years after that second birth, I went through intense wake down, shakedown. And what does wake down, shakedown really mean? It means that an awakened consciousness, which is being more and more embodied, starts shining light on every aspect of your unconscious that is still unconscious or hidden in the dark. So one thing after the other keeps popping up from your unconscious. And there was so much coming up for me all the time for 8 years, so I could not keep my life together at all. Everything kept on falling apart. You know, I could not hold a home. I had hardly any money. My relationships were disastrous. It's like you name it. On every level, it was just a complete chaotic disaster. And for some reason, I've always been given the eagle's view, so I can watch all of this and say like, oh, I see the bigger picture. It's all good and great. It's all the way it's meant to be. But not everybody around me had the eagle's view. I'll tell you that. So I looked like a huge mess for a lot of other people, I'm sure. And there came a point, you know, I mean, at that time I not used relationship, but for me relationship was an opportunity to actually heal some relationship trauma from the past. And what I discovered during that process, that it was actually a very ineffective way of doing it. Not to say that one shouldn't reflect like that with one's partner, but if that's the only way that you're dealing with, I mean, I did some healing work on the side, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't somehow getting to it deeply enough. So I started attracting more and more, how would I say, I started attracting more and more situations that sort of seemed to devolve rather than evolve. And I started really wondering what was going on. You know, it was like, how it should be getting better, not worse, is it not, when we keep working at it? And so there came a point when I actually started praying to God for it, give me a more effective tool, because this isn't really working anymore. As much as I'm healing, I'm also getting re-traumatized. And so soon after that, Kriya came into my life, actually. I had heard about it 20 years before. I had read the autobiography of a yogi, and somehow Paramahamsa Yogananda and the Kriya Yoga had sort of journeyed along with me without me even realizing it. Now when I look back, I see like, oh, it was always there, you know. But I became really consciously aware of it entering my life around my early 40s. And I felt a tremendous pull towards it. But my son was just born, so I couldn't actively start practicing it at a time. And I was a single mother at that time. But I did what I could. And so this is how it entered. And I had a couple of introductions to it before I actually was able to dive into it more fully. But before that, I was sort of tasting it a little bit here and there, and trying it out with a few teachers, and sort of like getting the preliminary taste for it. But right around that time too, then Babaji came into my life, and then from then on, as you know, once Babaji enters your life, then your life changes completely. So
Yes.
Yes.
I see the beautiful.
And since I've started practicing, yes, so since I've started practicing Kriya, I'll just mention this. My life has actually found some harmony. Things are starting to work on the outside. I have a beautiful home. I'm able to keep it. You know, somehow money flows in. I don't always know from where. You know, it's a constant practice of trusting that the divine will take care.
Yes.
But you know, my relationship is a much more harmonious one now. So I'm seeing that it really came in to bring in harmony into my life. And in a way, you could say that the process of the karmic burning or the purification is more on the inside now, or mostly on the inside. Not to say that it wasn't on the inside before, but it was sort of spilling out too much on the outside, making it very, very difficult to manage my life. And it was particularly hard having 2 children at the time. So, and now also having a child. So now, let's say it's not spilling outside anymore in that same way. It's able to be contained more inside of me. I mean, that's sort of the best way I can describe it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
In terms of body electronics, we would term that the healing crisis. So the healing crisis, you know, looks very chaotic as the universe rearranges itself on the outside.
Yes.
Whether that be
true, very true.
Yeah. And you know, the more we unearth out of the unconscious to be released, it has to have this rearrangement on the external level.
Yes.
On the
Absolutely.
I call it either the field, or you know how we've thought about, a lot of people are talking about holographic processes in body electronics, like John was talking about that decades ago, and John Ray, the founder of body electronics. So it's like what we put into the field from the from the top down, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and then ultimately it comes into the physical. So as in a healing practice, we're going back the way we came. So we're going from the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, and so the physical, everything has to have this this change. I've experienced those times and years in my life too, where the physical was very chaotic. But yet one of the principles is to keep going, to encourage that healing crisis and just to keep going during that. And eventually, I think you and I both are testaments to that, as we keep going and we progress, things do come into harmony.
Absolutely. I mean, there's definitely a harmonizing point that arrives, and it did actually arrive even before Kriya, but there was just something that was urging me to go deeper, because I reached a point where it came like, hey, there's much more, and how can I access that? So there was both the sense of like, I wanted something more effective. Effective meaning like I wanted something that would really work like a jet, like a jet plane, which Kriya yoga really is. And I found that the meditation practices that I had at that time were really, I mean, when I look back at it now, I mean, Paramahamsa Yogananda talks about it, other methods are like bullock carts in comparison to Kriya, which is like a jet plane. And I was craving for that jet plane. Maybe it also comes from turning 40 and realizing, whoa, I don't have an endless amount of time left. And there's an endless amount of things I still want to explore within.
Yes.
And I need a faster vehicle, So this is definitely one of the ways in which Kriya came in. And it is definitely a very, very fast vehicle. Yeah. And there's a constant, continuous diving deeper and deeper and deeper.
Yes. So I remember Yogananda speaking that with each Kriya breath, given with devotion, we transmute, I'm paraphrasing here, we transmute 1 year of karmic implications.
Yes, very true, very true. Mm-hmm. So that is really the power of it.
Yes. So in that sense, and it's like the effort made, that devotional effort. It's that vibration really that.
Yes.
Yeah. I really feel I'm so grateful that we've reconnected, because I really feel the coherence between the Kriya work and the body electronics work, and how they really coincide. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what comes to me is to anybody who is looking at the body electronics work, I really feel strongly that it would be advantageous to contact you and to to discuss with you what how they can proceed with you. And I think that would be a real benefit to anyone who is contemplating, preparing to attend a body electronics point holding intensive.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So maybe you could share, would you share, do you have an email or something that you prefer people to contact you?
Yes, the easiest way probably is to contact me through WhatsApp. You can also contact me through email, but sometimes emails get lost. But if you contact me through WhatsApp, and I can give you my Indian number, that is the easiest way, just to send me a message.
Yes.
And I get those easily. So do I just speak it here, or do you want to
Sure.
write it afterwards somehow?
Yeah,
Yes.
sure.
Mhm.
Sure. If you would speak it out for people, that'd be great.
Yes. So it's +91 from India, 9500 618 647.
Thank you. Thank you. So I feel like do you feel you want to add more now, or shall we end with a chant?
I think we're getting ready to end with the chant. And I just wanted to mention one thing with the Kriya that just to put here in the end. One of the things for me in particular, not all Kriya teachers might be so interested in this specific thing. But for me, because of what Babaji has indicated to me, I'm extremely fascinated with the evolution of this body, turning it into light body, and the whole process with that. So I'm doing a lot of exploring on the side with the Siddhar teachings, because the Siddhars are masters of that. So I'm doing some research with the Siddhars, parallel with my Kriya practice, to find ways, to find things to add to, whether it's something I'm eating or some other yogic practice to do, to bring in more and more light into this body, to turn these bodies into light bodies. And that's a whole other chapter to talk about another time. But I just wanted to mention that for me specifically, that is also one of the directions that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And it is one of the ways in which I use the Kriya practice, because Kriya practice itself brings in a tremendous amount of light into our physical bodies, transforming the cells itself.
Mm. Thank you.
Yes.
Mm.
So then we can end with a prayer, ending prayer. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om. Sri Guru Namaha. Hari Om.
Mm. Thank you. Let's do this again.
Yes, let's do this again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Jai Babaji.
Mm.